Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Strictly Travel Explored. For those of you who are tuning in for the first time, please feel free to follow us wherever you're listening to this podcast, whether it be Spotify, Apple Podcast, and anywhere else. And I really appreciate all the support. So, without further ado, we're going to get into a very cool segment about a recent trip that I had to Uganda. I was fortunate enough to travel last month with Jen to Uganda for one of my best friend's wedding, and we were also able to visit the safari out there and really get a up and close and personal feel to the land, see giraffes, elephants, water buffaloes, antelope. It was just absolutely picturesque. Flights out there usually start about close to $2,000 for a round trip economy ticket, and usually you got to at least have one layover, especially in either Amsterdam, Brussels, or either Europe or Ethiopia, or somewhere such as Dubai or Abu Dhabi. So let me break down into how I traveled with Jen all the way to Uganda and back using primarily points. So I was able to take advantage of a very, very good Air Canada deal at that time. They were offering a 30% transfer bonus via Chase Ultimate Rewards. I was able to transfer, I believe, 300,000 points from Chase all the way to Air Canada, where I paid about 90,000 points each way, along with $60 in taxes and fees, which came up to 360,000 points for the both of us to fly in Air Canada's business class, as well as Brussels Airlines business class, round trip from Montreal all the way to Uganda and back to Boston. To fly to Montreal, we booked a very cheap ticket on American Airlines, and to fly back from Boston, we did the same. So overall, we probably spent about $600 and 360,000 points for a trip that was mostly in business class. The only exception was one of our flights coming home. Unfortunately, we didn't get upgraded. We typically have gotten pretty high chance of getting upgraded via my American Airlines executive platinum status. So unfortunately, we sat New York to LAX in coach or an extra legroom. Wasn't that big of a deal, but most of our flights were very comfortable, and this really just demonstrates the power of points. Well, getting back to Uganda, the country of Uganda is heavily underrated. I think just the picturesque landscape, the beauty, and just how nice the people were was a vast difference than what I was expecting. We stayed at a resort on Lake Victoria, Speak Munyonyo Resort, which was an upscale luxury resort where rooms started at about $100 a night for I think 5 days that we were there. The property is beautiful, has swimming pools, and a large swimming pool, a really nice fitness facility with a little bit more dated equipment, as well as a very nice restaurant. And interestingly enough, some of the hotel rooms were a bit outdated. I ended up staying in one of the more outdated blocks during the first go, but on our return, we were able to stay in some of the more modern rooms, and they were just a huge upgrade from what we had earlier in the trip. The resort was just absolutely wonderful, especially for $100 a night. Something along this quality and this size in the U.S. would probably run you no less than $400 or $500 a night. And this is also where my friend held his wedding, which is just absolutely beautiful. The property is just breathtaking, as you know, on one end, when you're looking on the lake, you see a couple of islands in the middle of the lake, where one of them is actually a sanctuary for chimpanzees. And it's just crazy how a lot of the land in this country has been untouched. by developers, which is also has its pros and cons. Housing is hard to come by for a lot of people. I see that Uganda is still a very heavily developing country. We, as Americans, we take some of the power tools for granted. I see a lot of construction staff still using manual labor to kind of level the ground or break apart rock. So it just really puts things into perspective how not only fortunate and lucky we are in a first world country, but also the progress that needs to be made in order for a country that is really up and coming to really develop. I think the hardest part for a country that is completely landlocked, without access to the sea, is the lack of viable trade routes. Without viable trade routes, you kind of get screwed by your neighbors as they're able to implement high taxes and fees for using routes or for really importing goods, which really leads to a crazy gas price. The price of gas in Uganda is comparable or even more expensive than what we have in California, which is probably one of the most expensive places to get gas in the United States. So, with that being said, we were able to go to Murchison Falls National Park on a big bus, which was just absolutely gorgeous and beautiful. We stayed at Chobe Safari Lodge and then Para Lodge. They're sisters programs, and it was just absolutely wonderful. I would definitely recommend it if you ever have the chance to go out to Uganda and really explore the vast nature and the beauty of the land. Especially if you're able to do so in points. I think if you have a large stash of points, this trip can easily be had if you book maybe 8 months to a year in advance. Otherwise, with cash, it gets expensive really damn quick. This really just reaffirms the power of points, and I think that everybody should get into points. And it can be a very, very resourceful tool, especially if you're trying to travel to some of the more unique destinations in the world. Well, I think that's it for this segment. Hopefully, one of these days, I'll be able to bring a guest so we can chat about travel a little bit more. But at this time, thank you guys for tuning in. I really appreciate it. And please feel free to give me a follow wherever you're getting this podcast from.